All right, guys, I am back with a holiday movie review. I'm going to have one come up today and one tomorrow. So look for the next one to get released tomorrow morning on Christmas. I'm obviously going to record it today, but it will be up on Christmas Day. So look for that. That is going to be my absolute favorite holiday film. So I'll be doing a review tomorrow, and I've got this review today. So today, I am talking about the movie The Santa Claus, which was released in 1994 and stars none other than Tim Allen as Scott Calvin, a.k.a. Santa Claus. But he's not Santa Claus at the beginning of the movie. Now, this movie came out at a time where I was only into animated movies. It was the year I graduated high school. And I was actually going to college for art and animation and was really in love with the movie Aladdin at the time and some other films that I really enjoyed. I wasn't into the Disney live action stuff at all. This movie was not even on my radar in 1994. Could care less. And so I didn't see this movie until I was an adult. And now it is the first movie we watch at the beginning of every holiday season on Thanksgiving. It's how we usually kick it off. Didn't do it this year, watch Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, because that was an actual Thanksgiving movie, but it's what we usually watch on Thanksgiving. And this movie is very interesting. It still holds up really well today. Now, there are some things I'm going to talk about in my review that I didn't pick up on until just a couple of years ago. My wife and I started to notice something that we had not noticed in the 20-plus years that we have been watching this film. And it's really cool. So here's what's cool about this movie. Scott Calvin at the beginning is he's a divorced father. His son is with him, and I forget his son's name. His son is Charlie. That's right, Charlie. So Charlie is his son, and he splits time between his mom and his dad, and he goes to stay with his father for Christmas Eve night. Nothing goes right that night. They try to make a meal. They end up having to go to a Denny's. Nothing is right at the Denny's. And then they go back home, and then that night they go to sleep. And this is when all of the fantasy begins. And they hear Santa Claus on the roof that night. He goes out to investigate what's going on, thinks it's a burglar. Santa falls off of the roof, passes away, disappears, kind of like a Forrest Ghost from Star Wars. He just kind of disappears. And then the suit is left there. And we see Scott Calvin take the suit, goes with his son, and they deliver gifts that Christmas night. And what's really cool about the way this movie was paced is that the beginning of the film, you don't normally get to see you jump right into the action like that. Like, this happens pretty quickly in the film. And then we get to see, as he gets done with that amazing night, the next morning, he thinks it's all a dream. And he actually makes a comment when he's finishing delivering the last gift that he's going to have to get a CAT scan, which that line always cracks me up every time I see it, or hear it, I should say. So the rest of the whole middle part of the film is him dealing with being Santa throughout the year. And as he gets closer to the next Christmas, he starts to get larger. He's got these different changes going on with his hair, can't keep his weight under control. All kinds of stuff goes on. He goes to see a doctor. Doctor says he's fine. And the list gets delivered to his house by a bunch of FedEx people, and he kind of freaks out over it. And we get to see during this that there is a struggle between him and his wife, and how his son, got to go to the North Pole that first night. And he's obsessed with Santa throughout the year, and they think it's a detriment to him and his upbringing. And so there's a judge that actually gives sole custody of him to the mother because of his delusions. Now, this is the one part of the movie I don't agree with. I don't think there's any court in real life that would ever do this because somebody believes in Santa Claus like that. But that's what they did in the film to further the story along. Well, in the end, the ex-wife and Judge Reinhold, who is the person she's dating at the time, they finally realize that he really is Santa Claus as they go into the next year. And you've got Tim Allen, who really embraces this character for that following Christmas. There's some endearing scenes with him in a park, and kids come to talk to him. There's lots of endearing scenes in this film throughout that make it fun. Now, as far as stuff that doesn't work today, some of the special effects are definitely dated. Back then, they didn't have a whole lot of computer generated graphics, and so the CGI, they didn't have that kind of stuff, so it still had to be mostly practical effects, and some of it was done with a green screen and does not look all that well and doesn't hold up well. What does hold up well is Tim Allen sells this character. In fact, they've had 2 seasons of the Santa Clauses on Disney Plus, and we started the second season, haven't finished it yet, but the first season was pretty good. It also spawned a couple of sequels, Part 2 and Part 3, and I will be reviewing Part 2 next year. Now, Part 2 to me is not a better film, but there is one scene in the Santa Claus 2 that I think is the best scene they have ever filmed for any holiday movie ever, and I'll talk about that in my review next year, but I wanted to get this one up first. So I'm going to talk about what I rate this, and then I'm going to talk about that little thing that my wife and I started to notice that we never noticed on subsequent viewings. Out of 5 stars, I give this 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, I can't give it more simply because it's not like a meaty story. It's not amazing. It's just a very fun holiday film. You can just let go of your imagination, enjoy the film for what it is. We get introduced to some pretty cool characters, especially, one that has endured through the last, 30 years is David Krumholtz as Bernard. And so he's also in charge of the North Pole, and we get to see him and a bunch of other people too. And there's just a lot of fun scenes in this film. So I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Now let's talk about this thing that my wife and I noticed just a couple of years ago, and every year we try to see if we can see more. He was always destined to be Santa Claus, okay? He was always destined to be Santa Claus. I don't think that Santa Claus really died. He was just passing the torch on. He didn't fall off the roof and hit his head, die, and he had to take over, because he is constantly followed around by elves throughout the film. Now, I never looked online to see what people talk about in regards to this. It's just something my wife and I noticed, that you'll see some elves throughout the film. The first that we notice is at the Denny's at the beginning of the movie. So there are elves following Scott Calvin around, and he does end up becoming Santa Claus. So I think it was preordained that he was going to be Santa Claus. So see how many elves you can see throughout the film that are surrounding him, his family, as the movie progresses. All right, guys, so there's my review on the Santa Claus. I really enjoy this movie. It's one of the better Disney movies that they've released, and it does hold up over time, except for the special effects. But outside of that, it's still a great film. It's really fun for the whole family to watch. We really enjoy it. So what do you guys think of the original Santa Claus movie? How do you think it holds up today versus when it came out almost 30 years ago? Next year is going to be the 30th anniversary, which is pretty crazy. All right, I appreciate all the support. We will see you on the next review.